5 years of plumbing. This is the
Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to the Hillsborough Affordable Housing Advisory Board. I'd like for everyone to stand and we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Well, we don't have a quorum yet, so we may defer that to later or to next month. But I'd like to welcome everyone that's here and look forward to hearing from our public. And we do have several individuals that have signed up to speak. Sean Wilson, would you like to come forward? You have 3 minutes, sir. Welcome.
Thank you. Sean Wilson, Blue Sky Communities. I wanted to comment on the draft plan for the HOPE ordinance. My two general comments, and I hope to make some more specific comments, and I'm trying to kind of get a group of stakeholders together that maybe would have the same interests in mind, including myself and a lot of the nonprofits. But for the moment, what I really think the county should do is two things. Number one, you should come up with a plan that not only contemplates the $10 million for fiscal 20, your plan should really encompass 3 or maybe 4 sources of funding. The $10 million for fiscal 20, the $10 million for fiscal 21, the approximately $3.5 million left over from fiscal 19, and potentially there was a home round that had $2.8 million available, and I don't know that there was any applicants for that, so that money might also be available. So really you should be thinking bigger. You should come up with a plan that encompasses that whole $25 million. Secondly, the plan should be geared around existing stakeholders that have projects in the pipeline, like Blue Sky, like Habitat, and there's a lot of groups that have projects in the pipeline that are ready to go, that fit the goals that are outlined in the ordinance, that fit a lot of the strategies that are already in that draft plan. And so in order to make sure that the money gets spent on projects that can get done quickly and that are in people's wheelhouse, the funding should be geared, again, not towards specific programs, because of course there's going to be a competitive cycle, but it should be geared so it should be geared so that it works for the projects and the programs that the existing affordable housing service borrowers are already working on.
Okay.
And that's my public comment. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I really appreciate your comments. Representative Diane Hart, welcome.
Good morning.
We're very honored to have you here this morning.
Thank you. I'm not coming to you, though, as a representative. I'm coming to you as the CEO of East Tampa Business and Civic Association.
Okay.
And I just have a small PowerPoint presentation I just kind of wanted to share with you. And how do I roll yours? Okay. Many of you all do know that East Tampa Business and Civic Association has been around since 1989, and there are some people who may not know who East Tampa Business and Civic Association is. But as you can see, our mission is really to help stimulate opportunity inside of our communities, both business and housing opportunity. So I come to you this morning because we are prepared to move forward on some multifamily projects. And I just kind of want to share with you all, I understand that we are in a dire need of affordable housing units, rental units. More than 100,000 1,000 households are paying in excess of 50% of their income in housing cost. More than 200,000 or 41% of the households in the county are paying more than 30% of their income for housing costs. The needs of Hillsborough County residents will be served by promoting both affordable rental communities and affordable single home ownership opportunities in densities that contribute to transportation, accessibility, and efficiencies. We realize that if we put people out in places where there is no transportation, we're doing them a great deal of damage to them because they can't get back into job opportunities. And this is just one of the multifamily housing projects that East Tampa is working on currently. We're changing what the look of it is, but we already have the land acquired for this particular project. So that's one of our multifamilies. For years, we've been working on rehab. So I'm looking forward to some rehab purchase opportunities with the county so that we could buy something and rehab it. And we just brought you a few pictures of some of the rehabs that we've been doing out in the city of Tampa. We provided a little bit over $1 million in rehab last year for the city of Tampa. I've not worked with the county in a moment, but we actually built 11 units for Hillsborough County, and we did a bunch of rehabs for the county as well. We have some new construction projects going up right now. That's one over on Webster. We have a new construction project over in St. Pete. So we are working throughout the entire county, and I was just wondering if Ms. Howell might be able to give me an idea of some of her ideas and where you all are going with Hillsborough County and your affordable housing opportunities, if that's possible.
Okay. Sure. Cheryl Howell, Hillsborough County Affordable Housing Director. And so certainly because there is such a dire need, as you say, for rental properties and access to affordable housing units, we know that home ownership opportunity oftentimes has some limitations for low and moderate income families. And so we have put a tremendous amount of emphasis, if you will, on rental. And so when we put out our RFPs, you'll see for yourself that we are looking to increase and to ramp up our rental opportunities for low and moderate and extremely low income families as well. So that's a need that we know that we won't be able to catch up to very soon, but we have an interest in it. We are placing an emphasis on it, and so we are willing to work in a competitive way with the partners that are out in the community.
Thank you all very much. I'm on my way to Tallahassee. I will be fighting every single moment to increase our Sadowski Housing Trust Fund, so I'm going to run. I got to hit this road.
Thank you so
Yes,
much.
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Hart, my legislative aide, Lucas Martinez, is bringing you
Oh, okay.
the Hillsborough legislative platform, and he should be back just
Okay,
momentarily.
I'll wait until he gets up here, and then I'm out. Thank you all
so
very
much
much.
for being here today. And
Thank
right,
you.
You're on point.
Thank you very much.
Definitely on point. Thank you. Next speaker is Noelle LaCour. Did I say that right? Yes, you did. Okay.
Hello, good morning. I'm here today to talk about how it is counterproductive to have affordable housing neighborhoods governed by an HOA. There's an affordable housing neighborhood in Ruskin. It is a nice neighborhood filled with wonderful people. When the neighborhood was first built, the yearly dues were $300. Buyers were told that the dues would not go up. They would remain the same because as more lots sold, there would be more money due money coming in. That turned out to be far from the truth. The current dues are $710 a month, and last year the developer/HOA stated that residents could expect the dues to increase every year. How is that affordable? This neighborhood has a lot of blue-collar residents and older people on disability who all live on budgets, some very tight. This neighborhood's HOA illegally fined people $75 for doing work on their homes without permission, such as painting their front door. How is that affordable or fair? They threaten to fine residents $100 a day for rules that don't exist. How is that fair or affordable? They make up their own rules because they have no one to stop them. There being no government agency that oversees HOAs, the only remedy for residents is civil court, and that's just not feasible for most residents, especially ones that live in affordable housing. Affordable housing neighborhoods should not be governed by HOA. Hillsborough County's codes and ordinance should be sufficient enough. So this year, as you all think about the future of affordable housing in Hillsborough County, please remember what I said here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much for bringing that to my attention. I appreciate that. Nancy Takamori is our legislative or legal support for our board. I'd like to make sure we bring that up in the future, or at least address what communities are currently subject to those conditions. So I think that would be wise to do. Are there any other speakers? I don't have any other speakers signed up to speak. Okay. All right. Then I'll move on to chairman's report until, how many do we have to have for a quorum?
6.
6, okay. Well,
6 voting members.
we're not quite there yet, so we're not quite there at a quorum. We'll see if more show up. But in the interim, I'd love to offer a chairman's report. Excuse me. Jamie Ross is the president and CEO of the Housing Coalition, and she's going to be calling in.
Jamie, are you on the line?
I am on the line.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. Okay, great. Before I go into the various different things that I'd like to talk about, I'm going to value her time, given that I'm sure you're getting ready for a robust week with the opening session. But why don't I very quickly explain that you're going to offer us a legislative update regarding affordable housing at the state level, and bring us up to speed on the items that are at least on the agenda that can really value our efforts in the area of affordable housing. Many of you know Ms. Ross is an expert on affordable housing, is one of the most prominent voices in the state in advocating for affordable housing issues, which includes stopping the raid on the Sadowski Trust, which we all are passionate about. I'm very grateful that you fit us in today and your busy schedule, given that opening session is tomorrow, and so I'm going to let you lead. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Overman. I'm really, really honored to have been included in your meeting this morning. And I have to say, the Florida Housing Coalition, we look at Hillsborough County as a leader at the forefront of the state, a model for the many things that you're doing in regard to affordable housing, not the least of which is this board, the work that Cheryl Howell is doing, the capacity building for nonprofits, the really cutting-edge efforts on ending homelessness, your HFA, your Hillsborough HFA, which is absolutely a leader in many ways, but also in the whole effort for full funding of the Sadowski Trust funds. So everybody in the room, I know I'm talking to people who are really already housers, and so you may already be using the SadowskiCoalition.com website. But if you're not, I invite you to go to that website, which is funded by the state HFAs, the local housing finance authorities support that effort. That isn't the Florida Housing Coalition's website. It's a separate advocacy entity that is funded predominantly by the local HFAs. And again, Hillsborough's HFA is a leader in that. Commissioner Overman, we grabbed Commissioner Overman, I just want everybody to know, at our housing conference, our statewide conference that we hold every year in Orlando, and asked her to pinch hit to talk about housing through the economic lens. So you've got a bunch of superstars in Hillsborough, and I can't say enough about how important that is, because you are such a large county, and you have an extreme need for affordable housing funds. And so what did you do? You're committing your general revenue money of $10 million to supplement the money that you receive and should receive from the dedicated revenue source that we know as the Sadowski Act funds. you all are probably aware that, you just in 1 year were missing last year $15 million that you should have gotten in your dedicated revenue source, which, is hard to believe that in 1 year, $15 million could be withheld from Hillsborough County, monies that you're entitled to by statute, and because of the need, and because the programs work, and because there is no budget deficit. So it's great that Hillsborough County is supplementing the Sadowski Trust Fund money with your general revenue, because the fact is that even with the 16 or almost 17 million that Hillsborough County should receive from the Sadowski funds, you actually need more than that for the housing crisis. And I think some people don't realize that. They might think, oh, well, especially the legislators here in Tallahassee, you don't really need all of that money. It's so much money. The fact is, you need more than that money. So you could use the full funding that you're entitled to, that you should be getting, plus the money that you've committed locally, which, again, to be applauded for. So with that, what's happening right now, actually the session does technically start tomorrow, but of those of you who have joined us for our Sadowski webinars or Sadowski affiliate webinars, and I know in your packet you have the PowerPoint presentation from the webinar that was done before the holidays, you know that we've been saying the session starts long before the session starts. Right? All of this work is already being done on not only bills, but also on appropriations. So today, we have a Sadowski Coalition meeting at noon over at the Capitol. The Sadowski Coalition is those 32 statewide organizations that make up the Sadowski Coalition. Probably most everyone that I'm talking to right now is a Sadowski affiliate. And if you're not, I would urge you to become one. You just have to send me an email. It doesn't cost anything, and we keep you up to date through those webinars and through our calls to action on what's happening. We very, very rarely do a call to action. We sometimes have entire legislative sessions where there is no call to action, meaning asking people to contact a legislator, because sometimes it's just not going to make a difference. And so we don't ask people to do that unless we think it's really important. We have a call to action out right now. We put it out for the holidays, and it's definitely not too late. And that call to action, as you'll see in that PowerPoint presentation, is to Chair Cummings. And you see in your PowerPoint presentation in your packet who the leaders are on appropriations. And in the House, right below the Speaker of the House, is Chair Cummings. And so he is a critical person right now. We believe the most important person to try to persuade to use all the Housing Trust Fund monies for housing, so that this year you and Hillsborough County would get your $17 million that should be coming to you. And why do we say Chair Cummings is the person to reach out to? Because we feel like the Speaker, although he is the most important person in this process, is probably not movable on this subject. It's been tried, and of course, anybody who has any kind of connection to the Speaker of the House, we welcome your efforts. But it does seem like his position has been firm in not supporting the use of Housing Trust Fund monies for housing. So that is happening right now. We have a wonderful start to this legislative session. You'll see from that PowerPoint, we had our press conference. And at our press conference, we had something that has never happened before. And that is, we have a Republican member of the House who is co-sponsoring the bill to stop the sweep that Representative Silvers, a Democrat, have filed last year, which is the companion bill to the bill in the Senate, which has a Republican sponsor to stop the sweep, Senator Debbie Mayfield. So this year, that is unprecedented, that somebody on the Republican side of the House would take the position that the legislature must stop the sweeps of the housing trust funds. That gives us much more traction than we've had in the past. And of course, it's added to the fact that our Governor Ron DeSantis, a Republican, since he's been in office, this is now his second legislative year, has put full funding, full appropriation of the state and local housing trust funds in his budget for housing. So we have leadership from the governor's office to use all the housing trust funds for housing. We have leadership from the Senate to use all the housing trust funds for housing. And we have Republican support, not leadership, but we have support in the House for using all the housing trust fund monies for housing. So we are farther ahead this year than we have been before. And now getting back to why the call to action for Chair Cummings. Right after this amazing press conference where we had this unprecedented event of a Republican supporting a bill to stop the sweep, Chair Cummings came out to the press to say they needed to do a responsible budget in the House. And so they would have to be looking at sweeping trust funds. So our position immediately is the governor's budget is a responsible budget, and it needs to be supported. There's nothing irresponsible about using the housing trust fund monies for housing. It's quite the opposite. For all the reasons that I think I would be singing to the choir if I said right now. So you know that it's the right thing to do, not just for housing, but it's the right thing to do for our economy and to grow the revenue that we have in the state of Florida. So the most responsible thing we could do, the most fiscally conservative thing we could do, is use all the housing trust fund monies for housing. So that's on the Sadowski State and Local Housing Trust Fund side. That's what's going on, and I want to make clear, though, that we do not need the bills to stop the sweeps, which are great that they've been filed and they get this conversation going. We do not need those bills to pass in order to stop the sweeps. What we need is the appropriation of the trust funds. We already have a state statute that, by law, takes the money that's collected from the dock stamp that goes directly into the state and local housing trust fund by operation of law, just needs to be appropriated out and not swept for other purposes. So I know sometimes it's a little confusing because we have these bills to stop the sweeps. Well, why do we need those? So we don't need those bills in order to have the full appropriation of the trust funds. But if those bills were to pass, they would make it harder. That statutory change that is what is proposed in those bills makes it harder to sweep the trust funds than it is right now. But it doesn't make it impossible. It would elevate the Sadowski Housing Trust Funds to a place that the Transportation Trust Fund sits right now. And yet we have seen Transportation Trust Funds swept during the recession, but again, not regularly the way the Housing Trust Funds are. So just wanted to clarify that. Should I pause for any questions or go on to Senate Bill 998, Commissioner Overman?
You can move forward.
Okay. So the big housing bill that we have this year is Senate Bill 998, which was filed by Senator Travis Hudson, who also, if you look in that PowerPoint, you'll see his picture and his name as being one of the 6 leadership on our appropriation. So he is at the subcommittee level in the Senate on our appropriation. So he's a very important person to us. He had some workshops that he held before session. A number of us spoke at those workshops. He wanted to know about things other than funding that could be done to move the needle in a positive way for affordable housing. Then he took all of those ideas or the things that they heard and put them in a bill, you might call an omnibus bill, which is Senate Bill 998. Now, when that bill was filed, it was of great concern to the Sadowski Coalition because it did away with the bulk of the compromises that were reached by the statewide organizations that make up the Sadowski Coalition. So the SHIP set-aside requirements, for example, in the original version of Senate Bill 998, it removed the 30% set-aside for the very low income and the low income. It removed the 75% set-aside for construction. It removed the 20% set-aside for special needs populations, and so on. We spoke with Senator Hudson, a small group of us, and he said that he would do amendments to the bill, and that's why in that PowerPoint you'll see where we said, don't worry. We didn't know what would happen. However, just a couple of days ago, the amendment was filed, and there are no changes to the current set-aside in SHIP in the amended bill. So that's very, very good news. So the original way we operate now remains because there are no more changes to the set-asides that are reflected in this bill. One thing that's also very important in regard to SHIP that I spoke with Senator Hudson about was the reduction in SHIP admin. The bill, Senate Bill 998, was going to take the admin from 10% to 5%. And true to his word, Senator Hudson removed that from in his amendment to his bill. There's no changes to the admin cost. So it remains as is. In the original bill, the AHAC requires a local elected official to serve on the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, and this official or locally elected designee would have to attend regional workshops, and if they didn't attend, then their SHIP monies would be withheld. That's been softened so that the Florida Housing Finance Corporation can only withhold SHIP funds if the locally elected official or their designee fails to attend 3 consecutive regional workshops. And it requires each LHAP, this is new, it requires each local housing assistance plan to include the number of affordable housing applications submitted, approved, and denied. Now, that's something new. I'm not sure where it came from. It wasn't in the first bill. It is in this amended bill. So something we may want to talk with you all about. One of the things that the Florida Housing Coalition does, of course, we have relationships with all the SHIP administrators in the state. We'll frequently send out surveys and ask for people's input and then have conversations, and that informs what we do in this regard. Under the Catalyst program, which is the program the Florida Housing Coalition provides training and technical assistance to all the SHIP administrators and all the local governments and so on. The amended bill requires the Catalyst contract holder to convene biannual regional workshops for the local elected officials that serve on the AHAC. So the bill that as it had come out required that convene quarterly, the same bill that said, if you miss 3, you lost your money. Well, now it's going to be twice a year. Okay, the local permit approval process, totally remove that in the strike all amendment and remove the requirement for FHFC to have this rental to home ownership opportunity as a mandatory program. That's also removed in the strike all. And also what was fixed in the strike all is the community workforce housing loan program now says that instead of priority given to projects that set aside not more than 50% of the units for workforce housing, now it says the priority is given to projects that set aside at least 50% of the units for workforce housing. Something that's new that was not in the original bill is it allows the Florida Housing Finance Corporation to withhold 5% of the local government housing trust funds to provide funding for construction of transitional housing for persons aging out of foster care. But the way that the bill reads right now, on the campuses where those folks are living right now. Again, I think something we'll need to flesh out, get a little more information about. So those are the high points that I wanted to share with you, especially those that relate to SHIP. There's a lot on manufactured housing in the bill, a bunch. And again, it just came out. We haven't entirely analyzed it, but it's one of the reasons that we're meeting today, having a Sadowski Coalition meeting at noon today, is to talk about the call to action, the county date, all the things that are going forward now in the session, making sure everybody's working as hard as they can to get the full appropriation, and also this bill as it relates to Sadowski trust funds. At this point, there's very little in this bill that relates to the Sadowski trust funds. And one thing I do want to make clear is that the Sadowski Coalition has really only one purpose, and that is for the full appropriation of the housing trust funds. We really do not get into substantive housing ideas or issues because the Sadowski Coalition is made up of interest groups that have virtually nothing in common other than using all the housing trust funds for housing. So we stay away from other items. This bill had to be on our table because it went right to the use of the Sadowski trust funds. But once that is removed from the bill, this Sadowski Coalition really may not have much more interest in discussing this bill through the Sadowski Coalition, if that makes sense to y'all.
Okay. Thank you very much for bringing all of that to our attention. Clearly, Senate Bill 998 needs to be on our radar to pay attention to what things work best for not only housing, but for our communities. Just to give you a heads up, I do have an appointment Thursday morning with the Senate President, Bill Gavano. I am still trying to get appointments with the Senate Appropriations Chair, and as well as with Representative Cummings. So, and I will be heading up this afternoon. I should be able to get out of here depending on how long the land use meeting lasts. I'm trying to get out of there. I'm sorry that I'm not able to attend the meeting today. I didn't catch that.
Well, this is really good news. I didn't know you were coming up. You had all these meetings. I can't tell you how thrilling that is. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I know I've talked a long time, but I do want everybody to know that last year we had a very concerning bill that was going to take inclusionary housing policies off the table for local governments. And even though Hillsborough County doesn't have any inclusionary housing policies now, it was Commissioner Overman being in Tallahassee, meeting with Senator Lee, that changed that now, so that we have preserved having inclusionary housing as a possibility for you to use in your community, which is so very important. So thank you for coming back to Tallahassee. I typically say to folks, you don't need to come to Tallahassee, just meet with legislators at home. But when elected officials come to Tallahassee with what you're doing, this makes a huge difference. So I'm thrilled Thrilled. Safe travels.
I should be there later on this afternoon, and I'm there through midday on Thursday, so I'll chase you down.
Fantastic.
And that conversation that we had with Senator Lee was best accomplished because you were there. I basically grabbed you by the arm and said, "Hi, you're going with me. Let's go." So
Love it. Love it.
yeah, and it's that opportunity that does somehow present itself. So it is far from a waste of effort. Having face-to-face opportunities to talk about things that really drive our economy, that create jobs in our economy, and support all of our workforce, and those especially that are struggling and are house burdened, is a critical part of Hillsborough County's agenda. We're looking to create opportunities for people for full employment, not having to work 3 or 4 jobs, and for the large population. We have over 100, I think it's over 100,000 that actually don't have cars in Hillsborough County. How do you work? And how do you maintain your housing? And how do you take care of your family if you can't get to work? And so just as a wrap up, I have last week, was it last week? God, the last couple of weeks have been pretty quick. Last week, I brought together the City of Tampa Heart and had a robust smart growth planning brainstorm session. We got together and talked about how we need to look at what policies we have in place, what carrots and sticks we can do to create the outcome we're looking for a strong affordable housing effort to bring more affordable housing online for our residents, and as well as to make sure that we're taking care of those communities that are aging and need the rehab in order to make sure that they're safe and sound, especially during disaster recovery time periods. It was an excellent conversation in partnership with the City of Tampa's housing representatives and land use attorneys, and on both the city and the county. So we're bringing down those silos that allow some disruption oftentimes, or lack of coordination sometimes, and where we can create the most amount of what I call the carrots and sticks to have the outcome we're looking for, especially given that multifamily housing is an area that we need in Hillsborough County in a very large way. So I thank you, look forward to seeing you later sometime today, and good luck today at the meeting. I want to say, Jamie, is that our local delegation on the House side is willing and eager to stand with the Florida Coalition on any efforts, as well as with the Sadowski Trust. They were like, yeah, if we had realized they were going to have this press conference, we'd all been there. So make sure they know where there's an opportunity to stand strong towards our opportunities to build affordable housing and to support and to sustain affordable housing. They are willing and able and want to be there standing by your side. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
See you soon.
Did anyone else have questions or things you'd like to ask? Okay, great. Well, thank you very much. I'll see you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. I was actually going to cover that in my director's report, so that's excellent that we've got that taken care of. We also have, and as I said, that was an excellent meeting, an opportunity where the City of Tampa's housing efforts and our land use and comprehensive planning efforts will come together. Just for those of you that may not have been aware, the county is having a series of workshops on land use, sustainability, and local economics associated with how we grow, as it becomes incredibly important for us to do it in a very thoughtful manner to make sure that we're addressing the land that we need to protect for other purposes other than houses, and to make sure that we have our workforce living in an area where they can get to work, and hospitals and resources. So we're looking at it from a holistic point of view. There's a series of workshops that are scheduled that are on the county's website. If you have some interest, if you can't get here, tune in, because those will be robust conversations about how we address not only our fee structures and revenue structures, but also how we build incentives for creating better opportunities for the people and where they live. The next item on the agenda was the Subcommittee Foreclosure Subordination Policy. There is a meeting scheduled on January 16th to discuss that. Nancy, do you want to sort of give a description on what things are going to be discussed at that meeting?
Sure. Yeah, we'll be meeting to discuss the foreclosure and subordination policy. We had been approached by some multifamily developments that have existing loans through the county and maybe are looking to refinance or restructure those loans. And we do want to do what we can to assist them to maintain the properties and, continue with the affordability period. So our policy hasn't been looked at in a number of years. So we're going to review that and see how we can continue to assist these properties. And we're also going to be reviewing the bylaws at that subcommittee meeting to reflect the change in the meeting time and dates, and also the content, the membership of the AHAB committee and any other changes that are suggested or needed.
That's great. Yeah, we've had a significant reorganization, so getting our bylaws up to date, I really appreciate the effort of making that happen. What time is that meeting on Thursday?
I believe it's at 1?
2 o'clock?
p.m.
So I'm flying from Tallahassee in, so don't wait for me. But I will try to get back as quickly as I can.
Yeah, it's at 2
It might
o'clock
take you less
on the
time than
18th
it took
floor.
me.
Yeah, we'll see how this goes. Getting there is going to be fun too, I'm sure, because it does sound like there's a lot of folks that are heading up there today, so it'll be fun. 2 o'clock on Thursday, excellent. Director's report.
Sure. Hi, Cheryl Howell, Affordable Housing Director. And one of the reasons why we have community partner highlights is because we do so much in the community, but we can't do it without our partners. They're the ones that's actually out in the field that's doing the work. And you've already heard from one of our partners, East Tampa Business and Civic Association, and now you'll hear from THHI, that's Tampa Hillsborough Homeless Initiative. Ms. Antoinette Hayes Triplett is here this morning, and she's going to be talking about some of the new and innovative ideas that we'll be launching in partnership. Good morning. Thank you for coming.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
By the way, I want to thank you so much for everything you do.
Thank you.
And for agreeing to come speak with us today. There's a great partnership, although, you're a separate board and a separate entity, and when we don't do homeless services like you do. But having a good dialogue about how we can work together, I think, is critically important. So I'm looking forward to your presentation. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Thanks so much for having me. I just want to go over a couple of things that we're working on with the Tampa Hillsborough Homeless Initiative. I'm Antoinette Hayes Triplett. I'm the CEO of the Tampa Hillsborough Homeless Initiative. Our organization is designated by federal government, state government, and local government to oversee the strategic plan of homelessness for Hillsborough County. We administer funds from all three governmental agencies. Part of our goal is to make homelessness rare, brief, and non-reoccurring in Hillsborough County. We've had some great success over the last 5 years that I've been here, but we are looking to move the needle even further this coming year. And so I'll talk to you a little bit about our 560 plan. The goal is to house 560 homeless people in 560 days. We're well on our way doing that. So here are some stats briefly regarding what we've done over the last few years. 2019, we saw a decrease in overall homelessness, but if you look at that last bullet under 2019, we saw an increase in our unsheltered population. Overall, there's a decrease in unsheltered homelessness. When I arrived here in 2014, over 1,000 people, almost 1,100 people, were sleeping on the streets in Hillsborough County. We're down to about 670 people, but we still have a long way to go. The progress since 2014, as you can see in most categories, we have over a 30% decrease in those subpopulations that are tracked by our office as well as the federal government and the state government. 560 and 560 is a strategic plan to address the unsheltered homelessness and some of the top causes of homelessness in our community. The 560 plan, as I said earlier, is to address the housing needs of 560 people in 560 days. Those on the slide, those are our top leading causes of people experiencing homelessness. Lack of affordable housing, this is not a surprise to anybody. Poverty, mental health issues, unemployment, low wages, and substance abuse. There are 10 components of the 560 plan, and I'll just go over briefly all of those, and then I'll really hone in on the one that Cheryl has asked me to talk about, which is shared housing. So part of what we're doing with the 560 plan is looking from the beginning to the end. First thing we're doing is working on people working with people that have criminal records, and we've done an expungement clinic with the state's attorney's office over the last, we're in our second year. We've done 4 expungement clinics. We've worked on expunging criminal records for over 300 people with the cost savings of about $750,000 for our residents, because it costs about $2,500 per person if they were to get a lawyer to get their records expunged. And so our organization puts together just the money that's needed for the application, which is $75, and we work closely with the state's attorney's office to do the pro bono, to bring in lawyers to do the pro bono work. We expect to do about 4 to 6 of those again this year. If people get records expunged, that allows them to get access to better housing, better employment, and better education. So that's why we're doing that. We keep them from coming into the front door of homelessness, then that reduces our role of having to get them out of homelessness. Second chance reentry fair. We are in the beginning stages of planning this. There's a lot of job fairs that go on throughout the county, throughout the year, but we want to focus on those that have barriers in their way, and we want to only invite those that are willing to hire people that have records and things that are barriers. So our goal is to do 3 of those this year, and we're starting the initial planning for that. The cash program, which we have successfully put together with the help of the county, it has been really successful. The 560 plan is also has funds dedicated to expanding the cash program. CASH is an acronym for Community-Wide Affordable Supportive Housing. What we do with that is we incentivize the landlords to rent to people that have high barriers, that are experiencing homelessness. So we'll give the landlord an incentive that lasts up to 10 years, maybe even 15 years. They must keep the units set aside for those that are emerging from homeless. Under our belt right now, and THHI is the gatekeeper of those units, under our belt we have over 65 units in our portfolio through this process, and we're looking to add 150 more. What's really good about the cash program is the developers make most of their units available to this population. Even though we're investing in maybe 25 in the complex, they'll make maybe the other 25 in the complex available for this population. So there's probably about 150 units under 65 under cash, but our leverage is over 100 additional units through this. Hotspot mobile outreach. What we'll do with the Hotspot mobile outreach, we have great outreach going on throughout Hillsborough County for people that are experiencing homelessness in our encampment areas, in our downtown area. But what Hotspot mobile outreach will do is work on housing-focused outreach, where we will be able to set up shop somewhere so we are visible to our business leaders, We're visible to the people that need services and people that are providing services. Instead of doing mobile outreach, we go out one day, and then we go to another spot another day. The goal is to stay on site for up to 30 days to really engage the people that are experiencing homelessness and build that trust. That goes a long way. That keeps people from entering housing because they're distrustful sometimes of the people that are providing the services, or is services actually going to happen. So being able to do the mobile hotspot will be beneficial to our community. We're looking to put that online before the end of the first quarter. Rapid exit from shelter. What we've done with our emergency shelters is we've put vouchers into the shelters now. Before, an agency would have to send a person to a third party to get access to vouchers. We still have that component, but what we've also done, we put vouchers into the shelters so that they can rapidly exit people that are really ready to move out. That keeps them in shelter for a shorter period of time. So instead of 90 days and then they move on to another program, it's usually about 30 days, and then they can move into permanent housing. As a result of us doing this we did it as a pilot the first 3 years. Now we've really ramped it up. We are seeing, last year we saw a 15% increase in the number of people leaving shelter and moving into permanent housing. Speed leasing, similar to speed dating, we've done a pilot of that. What we want to do is those that I talked about that had the vouchers, the agencies that had the vouchers, bringing those agencies into the arena with landlords. So we're working with Bay Area Apartment Association as well. How can we bring both parties together along with the client to make sure that we're expediting the process? It's really hard for case managers to find affordable housing. So if we can bring it together for them as the conduit, then that's what speed leasing will do. And we've done a trial of it. It worked really well. Also, through the speed leasing, we incentivize landlords as well. They rent to somebody, they get $250, like a signing bonus, and then 6 months later, they get another $250. Operation Reveille, we've done Operation Reveille about 5 times since I've been here, since 2014. It has been replicated in other areas across the country, from California all the way through the Midwest and to several communities here in Florida. Operation Reveille is basically housing homeless vets in one day. We've made some tweaks to it over the years so that it can work for everyone, but it's to bring those resources in one place in one day. The first year we did Operation Reveille, it was planned in less than 2 months. I arrived here in August. Operation Reveille happened in November. We housed 50 homeless vets straight off the streets that day, and we had over 350 people sign up to volunteer in such a short period of time. So we'll continue to do Operation Reveille as long as there's a homeless veteran in our community. Shared housing, and I'll talk about this later. I'll come back a little bit. I'll touch briefly on the last two because these are my pie in the sky ideas, but I think they're coming to fruition. So housing is healthcare, as we all know, that if someone has access to housing, their healthcare will improve. We are having conversations with Hillsborough County Healthcare in order to take the funds that we are using for case management. Both of us are providing case management through some of the same vendors, which is ACTS, Grace Point, things like that. If we can get together and make sure those services are not duplicated, we can really use those funds that we get from the federal government to improve the number of vouchers we have. So if we look at the $1.2 million that we're spending about for case management and reallocate that to vouchers, we could probably add an additional 100 to 120 new vouchers in our community.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
The Beach House. So the Beach House is actually an acronym for the beginning of the end, abolishing chronic homelessness. We have some veterans or individuals in our community that would never be able to sign a lease, never be able to live on their own because they're so severely disabled and chronically homeless. And the Beach House is a community living environment If you ever get a chance to see the Fisher House, which is located at the VA Center, every individual has their own room, their own bathroom, but they have common space. It gives them a sense of dignity to have their own space, but also gives them a sense of community. And so we need that. We have people that are sleeping on our streets because they can't consent to signing a lease. They can't consent to maybe even giving their name in some cases. So the beach house is to catch those that are really vulnerable. Our goal is to have 3 beach houses in our community, which will serve about 15 people each. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the one that's really critical, the shared housing. Shared housing is only one solution for many single people residing in shelter and homeless encampments. An efficiency apartment is not obtainable even for those that have income or low-wage jobs and Social Security benefits. It is common for people that are experiencing homelessness to have a sense of community, to live together, and so the shared housing makes affordable housing an option to them. When they're living in a homeless encampment, they have resources that they share with each other. And so shared housing is basically moving persons from the street into their own home. Everyone would have their own separate bedrooms with a key that locks the bedroom so they can have a sense of privacy. Our goal is to have about 50 to 60 shared housing throughout Hillsborough County, which would affect about 150 to 180 people. We are in the process of starting our first pilot. Our board of directors met Thursday. They're reviewing our contract with between us and the county for the first group of shared housing. But what we want to do with shared housing is not just only house people experiencing homelessness. There are so many other pillars that will benefit. Our goal is to work with local non-for-profit agencies to help with the rehab, so that's job training for those that are in our community. It will also improve the housing stock in some of our low-income neighborhoods. And also, we're looking to have investment properties for some of our local residents so that they can start building generational wealth in our community. So I'm going to wrap it up. 560 is an aggressive and lofty plan. We expect to assist over 3,000 people, but providing housing to nearly 700 people throughout our community. Any questions?
Thank you very much for your report. I'm very glad that Hillsborough County loves to fund THHI. This year, you got an extra bonus on two different meetings with an extra $2 million going from our various different budget buckets to support this effort because it's so critically important. People can't thrive if they have nowhere to be. Yes. And so the work you do is so critically important to our overall economy, as well as to the citizens of Hillsborough County. So you're doing a great, great job. I really do like also the concept of the aging out of foster care, using the shared opportunities for shared housing. Many of our foster children have lived in sort of shared housing most of their lives. Especially those that have aged out of the system, they frequently are in group homes. They're in environments which oftentimes require a lot of people to be around. So having them have an opportunity to transition through shared housing seems to make a lot of sense. So I'm thankful for that.
We do have our first shared housing we did, I think, last year.
Yes.
With Cheryl and Miracles Outreach. Mm-hmm. And it was a fourplex and 8 people that are aging out of foster care, aged out of foster care, living in those units right now as well.
Yeah, great idea. Makes total sense. I love it, though, when that happens. So,
thank you.
Did anybody else have questions? Or
I've worked with Catholic Charities.
Yes.
And they have identified a number of communities that were developed short of the buildings above ground. They had the sewer, they had the water, they had the tie-ins, they had roads, they had lights, they had everything except mortar and sticks. And I know there's one down in, I believe it's the Ruskin or Gibsonton area off of 41. And what their concept is, they're 8 or 10 townhouses attached, and they provide housing for various groups, as you mentioned, but they also have elderly counselors, if you will, and I use that word elderly very carefully because
We're all in that class?
I'm getting there, yeah.
We're all in that class?
And I was wondering if it would be, I know that Sean Wilson is working with them in a couple of areas to do, from brand new ground. But have you met with anybody from Catholic Charities, Maggie Rogers, or anybody like that?
Yes.
Because they have that spot down there. It was going to be an apartment community, if I remember correctly, and it failed back in 08, 09. And I think it would be a wonderful opportunity. I don't recall exactly how many lots that are developed already that could go to great use.
I've met with Maggie Rogers about a month ago, but we didn't talk about that specific property, so I will talk to her about that. With the shared housing, we're looking to work with not-for-profit agencies, for-profit agencies, and then some of the local residents. So once the board divvies that up, then we'll be moving forward, but the next couple of months, we'll be moving aggressively. What I didn't mention is all of the housing vouchers that we're talking about comes with the wraparound services for people that are emerging from homelessness.
That's
I'm
great.
happy to help any way I can.
Thank you so
Great.
much.
Ms.
Yes,
Combs?
I have a question. So I have two questions, actually. For your rapid exit from shelters,
Yes.
and similar to like the speed leasing and Operation Reveille, where are you finding housing for these individuals?
So we have someone on our staff
Okay.
that is dedicated to engaging landlords, letting them know about our products. And so it's all throughout Hillsborough County.
So is some of it coming from the cash?
Yes.
Some of it's coming from the cash, but
So all of that works, the whole plan works together. So speed leasing, those people that are moving into using speed leasing may be moving into some of the housing that's paid for by cash.
okay, but you're finding them.
Yes.
I mean, that's safe to say that you're finding them
Yes.
to house these people.
Yes.
Okay, because we just can't find anything.
Yeah, it's very difficult, and that's
Yeah.
why we have a full-time person on board, but also the incentives go a long way.
Okay.
And I can tell you about the cash program, so it's
Yeah, I could see how that incentivizes
okay.
people to do it.
Yeah.
And then my second question would be, how do you determine where you would set up a hotspot mobile outreach?
So we have our data from our point-in-time count.
Okay.
Also, on a daily basis, our outreach team, which includes the sheriff's department, the police department, many of our agencies are geotagging where we can get that data from. So when we do our shameless plug, our point-in-time count is February the 20th from basically 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. There are 8 locations throughout the county where people can mobilize from to help us count those experiencing homelessness. We're looking for 650 volunteers.
And if someone was interested in setting up a mobile hotspot, how would I go about doing
So we are in our initial stages of doing that, and so
Okay.
your area definitely is part of our,
Yeah, so I could just
area.
reach out to someone.
Just call me.
Okay, thank you.
Sarah, I just want to chime in with you as well. That's why it's critically important that we work with our nonprofits to create affordable housing units, because oftentimes relationships are forged so that they actually lease apartments to some of the other clients that's out there. You know, our rules are somewhat cumbersome in our HUD program and sometimes even in our state programs. And so we've been able to help forge those relationships in partnerships with THHI as well.
Yeah, we're trying to do things that are really outside the box because doing the same thing for 20, 30 years has not worked. So some of these things are us trying to be really creative, and it's really getting noticed on the federal level as well. They're having discussions about the cash program on the federal level. So,
I have a quick question for you, but go right ahead, Cody. Mr. Powell?
You mentioned about, incentives that you offer to, like, landlords.
Can you pull your mic?
You talked about offering incentives to landlords, and it sounds like they're monetary, like, incentives.
Yes.
But are there any other incentives that are non-monetary that, for example, I do a lot of property management, our firm does, and we took over some rental units over in the Brandon area, and when that owner purchased into there, they had some legacy tenants that were from Axe. And we ran into one particular, resident with Axe that she was, had some mental health, problems, but throughout the term of like her lease that she was there, she she left her dog there for like a week unattended, like outside, chained up, and we had to go through there and feed it, and just causing a lot of issues within the community. And then what happened from there is that people start posting online reviews saying, hey, don't live here, because this is either the property management company doesn't know what they're doing, they're not doing a great job, or whatever it may be. So then like that owner is really less incentivized to continue working through that program through no fault of their own and no fault of Axe, but because it's a great program. But how do you go about trying to mitigate those problems to really, monetary incentive is great, but reputation can really be a lot better sometimes than money.
yeah, I agree totally, and that's why we've hired a person, full-time person in our office. So that person is the liaison between the agency that has the voucher that should be doing the case management with that tenant, but also the liaison with the property owner. So if the property owner is not getting results when they're talking to, say, for instance, an agency, then we can go in and have that conversation. We also have funds set aside for a mitigation as well. So just a phone call, get everybody together, usually helps with the situation. And let me say this, that there were some changes in the federal regulation a few years ago regarding how much mandatory case management can happen. So if a person says, I don't want case management, I don't want to do this, the agency cannot force a person to receive services or help. As long as they are being a good tenant, they can stay, they should be able to continue with their voucher, so that then that becomes just a regular housing issue, and unfortunately. And I think some landlords have been burned. Well, we tell the landlord that are using any of these programs, you will have case management. You will have someone either in our office or with the agency that can help mitigate some of the issues. What some of the agencies can do is relocate that person and not move that person out of the program, but just move them to a different location and then work on with them instead of the person getting evictions. And evictions, we can hardly get someone housed if they have an eviction.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
What's your typical response time to a property owner when they have a complaint and they call in the THHI?
It should be immediate. If it's not, let me know. It should be definitely within a few days.
Thank you.
I wanted to, thank you for all the work that you do. I mean, you really do put out emergency fires on a regular basis. And it is important to make sure that we recognize the value of the landlords that choose to participate in this program. Have you found that to be more difficult of late, now that the markets have improved and rental rates are going up? Is it more difficult to find landlords that will
Absolutely.
participate than it was, say, 5-10 years ago?
Absolutely. That's one reason why we put together the cash program. It's so difficult, even to the point that some landlords were not taking vouchers that were held by veterans. And so veterans had to relocate. And the vouchers, unfortunately, are not that much. So it becomes difficult. So the incentives help the landlord close that gap to what they can get on the fair market versus what the vouchers are. Yes. Some vouchers are like $800. And I mean, where are you going to live for $800? And that includes your utilities. So.
Right, yeah. That, our metrics don't really work well, given our funding. The good news is, we actually have an opportunity, assuming we keep our ducks in a row. I received a letter from Kathy Castor's office, helping us understand with the recent budget that was passed in fiscal year 19, that shared with us that Hillsborough County will, and Tampa and Hillsborough will directly benefit from a number of provisions that were passed in that budget that was recently signed. The Community Development Block Grant of $2.8 billion, $100 million increase above fiscal 19, and the Home Dollars, which is $1.35 million, another $100 million increase was approved and budgeted. And so while we work together, we can tackle this, but it's going to take taking advantage of those increases that we look for how we budget that for this year. But we also see that there's some housing issues with some of our military personnel.
Yes.
What's going on McDill, and then what we have is challenged available housing in the East County, where a lot of our military personnel live. What we are starting to do as a county is monitor eviction notices in order to catch them right away for three purposes. One, to be able to figure out a way if there's going to become a homeless person or family. And two, to be able to support those families that are now in crisis. Because when someone gets an eviction notice and there's children involved, it becomes a family crisis. So the Hillsborough County Family Prevention Service Center out near the off of Falkenberg is designed to also track those eviction notices to see if that's what's causing the family in crisis, and to make sure that we provide the wraparound services to help them, either get the respite they need in order to help them get relocated or to assist them in that process. So the partnership with you is so critically important, and thank you very much for the work you do.
Thank you so much. Thanks to. Go ahead. Yes.
One more question. I had a question about the
Taking notes, Sarah.
the cash.
Now you know why she's here, right?
The cash program. Are you
Yes.
finding that the apartment complexes or the owners that you're working with, are they including, like, say they have 24 units, are they including all 24 units to be set up for that program, or are they creating, or like they have 2 units? Because as
It varies. Yes,
Okay, it
it
varies, because, really trying to promote more of inclusive housing and mixed-use
we are
housing,
too.
where it's not all, segregated to this population.
Right.
So you see
it's
a mix.
It's a mix.
Okay, and
definitely.
are you guys trying to encourage to have more of that mixed approach instead of having the entire?
Yes,
24
absolutely.
units?
In fact, the not-for-profit agency that we've worked with in the past, they like the mixture.
Okay, good.
So it works good for everybody. We have 3 current properties under us. We've worked really closely with the counties, even including Gene Early. One of the newest housing that we've done, we did healthy living in there, where we put workout equipment in one of the units and case management office in the other unit, so that people can have access to some workout equipment. But we're working on talking about diabetes and food insecurities and things like that at those locations.
Well, thank you very
Yeah, there's
much.
one more question.
Sorry to come to the party so
Councilwoman
late.
Donahue?
Because you are in the community and talking to the homeless community as you are, and they seem to know you and recognize you, are you also going to be partnering with the census?
We've had the census at our last meeting last week before last. We did have a representative talking about the census and what we can do. So we are having that conversation.
Okay, great.
Yeah, our federal funding and our state funding is dependent on how many people we need to serve. So that census this year is so critically important. Anybody that has time to volunteer for gathering that information, as well as your effort. When you said February
20th
20th, and where do they find information on how they can volunteer?
At our website, THHI.org.
Okay, excellent. Make sure we get that information as well. But I would encourage everyone to reach out to your neighbors that have maybe some time to participate in this. It's critically important that we get our numbers right, because our population is very, very important, especially when it comes to our federal funding. So we want to make sure, remind everyone to take advantage of helping us gather that information for the census. You have one more question?
If I may, one last question, hopefully. Referring to the apartment side, I know that for a long time, there are a number of apartment community owners who, for some unknown reason, I just can't fathom it, refuse to accept vouchers. Somebody's waving free money in front of them, and they're saying no, and the money goes into their bank account on the 3rd.
Plus, they can get more money.
Plus, they can get more money.
No, more money without the vouchers.
Right. Well, yeah, but there's a social thing that I feel anyway.
I do too.
The other thing is, on the census side, there are many apartment communities that refuse to assist the Census Bureau in providing information for the folks whose doors don't get answered. In fact, there's many who will see the census person come on their property and tell them that they're not allowed to be there to solicit. So I think we need to, and again, I'd be happy to, given my position in the apartment industry, I'd be happy to assist in both of those areas if I can, whatever I can do.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Good to know. Good to know.
I
Thank
just-
you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Cheryl. Also, the rest of the Board of County Commissioners for their support over the last 5 years that I've been here, as well as Felicia Cosby Rucker, who is amazing, and Jean Early for their partnership continuously.
It takes a village.
Definitely.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, we have a few more minutes, so we're going to go through the rest of the items. We still don't have a, we still don't have a quorum, so we're going to move this on. Recently approved Board of County Commission agenda items.
You'll find in your packet, Board, all the agenda items that were approved since our previous meeting. All of them are atypical updates, modifications, some changes that had to be taking place to contracts. The only one that was somewhat of an anomaly was the subordination agreement for, I want to say it's Haley Park, and we'll be addressing the overall policy issue at our subcommittee meeting so that we can bring that policy really up to today's market. Okay?
Thank you.
We have our updates for our monitoring, our planning and reporting contracts and fiscal division. Everything is going fine. We have an interim contracts division manager. She's sitting right back in the back, Miss Layla Hartz. She is a tremendous team member and a real contributor to our process. So our team works hard, and you'll hear me say oftentimes that we are lean and mean. It's not a whole lot of us, but we do a whole lot of work. New grant funding. I do want to make an announcement. Tampa Housing Authority received a tremendous increase in their self-sufficiency program. And that's huge. It's a huge opportunity when you look at home ownership opportunities. I see Tina Swain out there, and she didn't come up to the podium today to talk about home ownership opportunities. And while we have an emphasis on multifamily rental, home ownership opportunities still are a very critical part of what we do out in the community. And they Habitat typically serves 60 to 80% median family income, create home ownership opportunities. And our very own UACDC, Sarah Combs, they're doing some things out in the university area as well. And so while we're focusing on rental opportunities, there's still that need to move the needle in terms of home ownership as well. And I see Mike sitting back in the back from Florida Home Partnership. Thank you so much for being here. They provide a tremendous amount of home ownership opportunities down in South County in the Ruskin area and Waimama area. And if you've not gotten an opportunity to go through some of their communities, I encourage you to do so. They are not brand new communities either. Some of them are 5, 6, 7 years old, and they still look gorgeous. And these are for families, 50, 60, 80% median family income, and the communities look good. So when people say, well, they just can't afford to have their own home, or they can't, or, the communities will look bad, then I want to say I can challenge that with some of the communities that Habitat has and Florida Home Partnership has, and some of the work that's being doing throughout the county by RTTB, CDC of Tampa. So we have Catholic Charities, University Area CDC has a multifamily unit. And so, I just want to say I challenge that conversation as well. We have our monthly newsletter that comes out, and we don't have any future business items at this time, Commissioner.
Okay. Sounds great. One of the things that I'm working on, which is probably a long-term wish list as far as future, unfortunately it's probably really future, is an effort to try and increase the number of 9% tax credit deals that we can achieve. Currently, we get one in Hillsborough County, and for a county this size, we share that via lottery with the city of Tampa. It sets us up for competing for that, which we want to work together instead of competing. So I don't know how to make it happen, but I'm going to work my butt off to try and make it happen, because the county this size, 1,000 square miles and 1.4 million people, we need more than one 9% credit deal. And so I'm going to do what I can to try and move that needle however I can get it moved. But, and of course, you get stuck along the way on occasion, but I'm going to try and make that happen. So other than that, and the fact that I'm heading up to advocate on all of our efforts and to help people recognize that we think it's critically important to sustain strong families and strong communities, that not only is education and transportation a key element, but housing and available housing is critically important. The State of the Region meeting this week discussed that affordable housing is the key. Transit, access to getting around, and affordable housing is the key to a strong economic environment, and we are lacking in that availability for our community, and it will hold us back if we don't move forward. So I got the data to make the argument last week. It's across all of Tampa Bay. Pinellas is having the same challenge. So we've got our work cut out for us, and I really appreciate everybody's efforts moving forward. And without anything else, I'll call the meeting adjourned. Oh, one question from Sarah Combs?
I'm just wondering what the plan is for the Hope Biennial Plan. What's our
When
next
is
step
the public hearing is set for January 20, what?
I
20?
believe that the request for the public hearing is set for January 23rd, so we had to kind of redo that because there was no vote on that the last time. So we're going before the board on the 23rd to request a public hearing.
The public hearing. So there's still time for comments.
Okay, so just so I understand that right and I can follow it right. So January 23rd, it goes in front of the Board of County Commissioners
To set the hearing.
To set the hearing.
As a request to set the hearing.
Okay.
We have to request the public hearing. That's a part of the process. We can't just set a public hearing. We have to go before the board to request the public hearing.
Okay, and then, so then a date would be set?
They will, at that meeting, they'll set the date based on availability on the board agendas for, February and during February preferably.
And
Because
then
we want to do it as quickly as possible,
Yeah.
but we have to ask, the
So
board
then
has to make
the
that.
date would be set, and then you'd have that meeting, and then what would be the next steps?
Well, once it's set, then the board will discuss, vote, and it'll be
Oh,
set.
okay.
So it is, if you have comments, make sure you get that to your commissioners. Because we put the plan forward, and now it's up to the Board of County Commissions to approve that plan. But it's critically important that if you have commentary, just as we heard from Mr. Wilson this morning, that information will be shared with the Board of County Commissioners in general, so that they're able to actually consider, possible modifications at this point. But we'll have another board meeting before that hearing occurs, correct? So we can make any appropriate adjustments at the next AHAB meeting. Any other commentary or questions? With that, I thank you for your time, and the meeting adjourned.